right, Daljeet. It's a pleasure to have you here in this conversation, TE Spotlights. Again, we are recording live from the Devcon venue. We had the chance to meet here in Bangkok, and we met actually at EFCC. I met your co-founder, Paul, where you presented point systems as part of a wider perspective on shaping incentives for Web3 projects. And today we are building on this conversation because you have some news, you're building something new. But before we dig into that, I'd like to, please introduce yourself and let's talk a little bit about your background.
Right. Yeah, so thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Daljeet. I'm one of the co-founders of OpenBlock. And yeah, my background is mostly in data science. I was working as a data scientist and in VC at Andreessen Horowitz. And then after that, got into DeFi. And so it's been, it's been really a wonderful time to apply data science into on-chain Web2, Web3 world, and we've built a lot of interesting products there, and yeah, happy to share more about it.
All right, so everybody talks about data and the public ledger on blockchain. There's this notion that we have total data availability and total transparency on the blockchain. Nevertheless, you claim we have way too few data, particularly about users. Why that?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, there is a lot of data about wallets on blockchain, but it's very little about it's not very revealing about who this wallet actually corresponds to. And we're able to give understand its users, let's say, productive value towards the network some of the time when the metric that we're looking for is sybil resistant, like for example, staking or liquidity deposits. But when we're looking to grow a grow a user base for a different metric that can be gained by bots, the on-chain data is not enough. We need to find other bridge-in data from Web2 or real-world identities to biometrics to bring that data into Web3 so that we can start to understand if this user is a bot or not a bot. And it's not a bad thing if the user is a bot. There's many areas where bots give productive value to a network, but some of the time they can extract value. And we want to understand these users a bit better. And so that's where we find that we've kind of reached some of the limitations on the on-chain data, and we want to bridge in more data to Web3. And the way we think about it is kind of like right now, let's say world computer or Ethereum is only it's kind of its own silo. It's kind of in its own planet, and it's not connected to anything. And so right now to get there, it's like a kind of a difficult road, and you can't really bring much in this road. Um, and so we especially around like digital data or identities. And what we want to do is we want to make that road much wider. If it was just a walking path, we want to make it, a full highway, and basically connect it to the internet, right? So give blockchains internet access, which is really not there today. And we've been able to bridge some of our data into blockchains. We've been able to do bridge value on chain through cryptocurrencies and tokens, but it hasn't been, and then most recently with stablecoins. But most of our data, and I would argue that this is very valuable data, on the order of user data is like on the order of $5 trillion, isn't able to, go through this bridge right now. And so one of the things that we're looking at doing is building a more robust bridge, one that can take in, help users bring in their data onto Web3.
And this brings us to the Universal Data Protocol, a new protocol you are working on. which is, I would say, the Web3 proposal on the data industry and data insights from Web2. So you are taking a slightly different route. Please elaborate how you'd like to shape this protocol and why you build a protocol.
Yeah, so far, like I said, like data hasn't been interoperable. It's not been interoperable in Web 2 between various Web 2 walled gardens. I can't bring my data from Facebook to Google. And similarly, it's not been interoperable from Web 2 to Web 3. And this is kind of uh, one of the big drawbacks right now for Web 3 is like, if I can't bring my data in, the calls and applications don't have as rich of a design space from which to work on. And if you could bring it in, you could build all of these composable applications on top of this data. And so we're kind of have this similar like data silo that we have had in Web 2. And there's a huge amount of unlocks we would get if we were able to bring this data in. For example, with sybil data, we could build credit histories, or we could reward real users. We could do all of these interesting applications in DeFi that we couldn't do historically, like under collateralized lending. And because like let's say Web3 substrate for developers has kind of stayed the same because it hasn't been much more interesting data, we haven't seen like a big difference between the applications that came this year from the ones that came last year from the ones that came the year before. And so what we're hoping to do is bring in a lot more data into Web3 and unlock all of these new use cases and new interesting applications. The difficulty so far has been, how do you do this? Do we have the technology to do this? And recently, the way we're thinking about it is around verifiable data. So there's these new interesting, this research that has come out in the last, honestly, it's been going on for about 10 years is zero knowledge to let us attest to Web2 data. When some of that research is around looking at signatures of this data that we've seen. So for example, we can look at email signatures. There's a very interesting project called ZK Email that utilizes this. We can look at passport signatures. There's an interesting project called ZK Passports that's doing that. But there's a whole plethora of signatures, and we've seen that attest to data that about us, about our identities, about data we've created in Web 2. And there's been some bespoke, like let's say, applications that show us it is possible and help us use zero knowledge to bridge this data on chain.
Zero knowledge attestations allow us to use data in a different way and also for users to manage their data, right?
Yeah, the main thing that zero knowledge here gives us is this ability to prove that this data was signed by a certain authority. So we could say that this data was signed by Facebook, and this is my Facebook data, or data was signed by Coinbase, and this is my Coinbase data. And it allows us to use the proof from zero knowledge to attest to data, and then only show what we want to show. Maybe we want to show just the fact that our age is greater than 18, or we want to show that we have a certain amount in our Coinbase account without revealing anything else about us. And so it gives you a couple of these properties, like allows us to prove that we have this data and then prove whatever we want to about this data while maintaining privacy. So what we've seen is so far like a few use cases here and a few people who have kind of built 0 to 1 applications in these areas. But what we'd like to do is open up and make a developer sandbox that lets anybody do these things, lets anybody port data over from Web 2 to Web 3 without even thinking about it. And that requires a lot of better developer experience, better usability. But we feel like the technology building blocks are here and ready to do this. And one of the things that OpenBlock does very well is around incentives and helping L1s and L2s give away incentives and rewards. And so there's a big need from our existing customers for this data. And so we're hoping that these two areas can kind of synthesize here, and we can really have the right incentives and the right technology to really improve the state of art for Web3 and give blockchains internet access.
Can you walk us a little bit through this ecosystem you would like to build here?
Yeah, so OpenBlock is kind of a base layer for all data infrastructure in crypto. So a lot of the work we've done so far is around understanding on-chain data, building really good analytics, and then building intelligence. So we're able to take on-chain data and build all the way up to sybil models for understanding sybil clusters. And you can do all of this currently on our platform. So you can bring in your data, or you can see a lot of on-chain data, and you can start to make sense of it. But now we're able to do this very well for on-chain data. We want to do this. We want to basically add to this and enrich this on-chain data with Web2 data. And so that's kind of the newest addition to the platform. So you're able to not just understand your users, but also help them give you more data so that you can better reward them or better work with them. So at the end of the day, it's an end-to-end data platform, and this was one of the biggest suffocating points of our customers was, hey, we don't really understand our users. Even after you gave us all of these great models, we want to go further, and so let's let their users opt in to giving more data as well.
For everybody interested in getting in touch and learn more, maybe see if this is a fit to their product or their project, where should they go to?
Yeah, we'd love to have you check out openblocklabs.com. It has everything about what we do. Thank you.